Russell caught up with Michael Shellenberger, who has the public outlet over on Substack, and he has been talking and writing a lot about censorship and what he calls the censorship industrial complex. He was kind enough to make some time for Russ, and like a functional human being, actually had a conversation, didn't freak out and pretend he didn't know the camera was on and run away. So Russell asked him about the right-wing, pro-Israel, free speech, censorship, double standard, hypocrisy, what have you. Here you'll see Russell phrase the question, and you'll see Michael's answer.
And this is part of a longer interview that we'll drop on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll drop the full thing. It's about 8 minutes, but this is about a 2-minute piece.
Congress just passed a law, just passed the House, that would essentially...
Hang on, I just want to point something out. We get cards and letters all the time saying, hey, I think I've given all the blood for my membership fees that I can give. Where's my money going? You see that on Shellenberger's lapel? You're going to notice how you see how clearly you can hear me?
Oh, the microphone, yeah.
We got some wireless lavs, so no longer will my interviews sound like they're taking place at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, there you go. Beautiful. All right.
Congress just passed a law, just passed the House, that would essentially criminalize protest against Israel on college campuses. Would you consider that part of this overall move towards dangerous censorship?
I think that the hysterical overreaction to student protests is mostly being led by Republicans. I think it's absolutely hypocritical. It's counterproductive for Republicans. I say this as an independent. I don't think it's part of the same group of people that are doing the censorship industrial complex. I condemn it unreservedly, but I don't think it's the same thing. I think what really scares me about it is both that it's a terrible conflation of criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. That's very dangerous to do. You want to be able to identify genuine anti-Semitism in the society. You don't want to exaggerate it. Same thing with racism and homophobia and the rest. But I think it also it undermines the ability of some very strong defenders of free speech in Congress who might be able to shut down the censorship industrial complex. It weakens their ability to do that because it opens them up to the charge of hypocrisy.
Okay, now I must say, I've been at every single panel at this festival.
Sorry, we have to cut this. We have camera shooting right here.
Okay, sorry.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
For the most part, no one is talking about this. Why?
About censorship?
About this House bill.
Well, they should be. It's a new thing, but I think also this is more of a center-right gathering, and I think this is an issue the right has been bad about. So it's much more comfortable for people on the right to criticize censorship by the left than it is when it's done by their own people.
There you go. It's a good answer. Reasonable answer from a reasonable man, and that's important because, he has a conservative following mostly. I would say not only, obviously, but yeah, no, he has a lot of right-wing people who subscribe to his outlet, and he was obviously invited to speak at what he admits here is a center-right conference. Greenwald, I would say, is probably further left on balance than Shellenberger, but given a lot of Greenwald's stances over the years, he told us to our face, no secret, he has attracted more of a sort of right-leaning audience over the years. He's been fantastic on this whole issue for these past 7 months now. Shellenberger hasn't spoken up about this a lot, but to the extent he has been anti-censorship, and so that's a good answer. He tweeted this out, he reposted this, so he's obviously proud of his response there. And so yeah, that was a relief to hear. If he had given a bad answer, I'd have been very depressed, very upset.
Not that
I'm not like a massive fan of his, but I do appreciate a great deal of his work, and it would have been a real drag.
Yeah, he opened the festival, actually. He was the very first speaker. And he gave a lecture, which again, both of the things that he headed up, he did a solo talk and he did that panel on the WPATH files. There was nothing there I disagreed with. I myself, the reason he's gotten a right-wing following is he's been breaking down this movement among a certain portion of the left towards this victim valorization. So that's basically what his lecture was about how you've taken the heroic arc of Joseph Campbell, which has been kind of core to the way that we have thought about heroism, overcoming obstacles in our civilization, and we flipped it and made being a victim virtuous. And he pointed out, the motto of the civil rights movement was "We shall overcome," not "We shall be a victim." And that is a point of view.
Succumb.
We shall succumb. Exactly. You should write that to him. He can change up that. He can change up that slide. Yeah, and that is something I absolutely agree with. I have said, when you look at left movements that have won, I mean, what do you think, man? You went up to Mao on the Long March, and you were like, man, I really don't feel appreciated, and I really feel like people are not giving me my proper respect. Like there is this valorization among some people, not everybody. I think there's a tendency to feel that the personal responsibility is a conservative buzzword, and it can be, but not exclusively. Yes, personal responsibility is a thing. It doesn't mean people shouldn't have health care. That's really the dividing line, right? But it doesn't mean you have no responsibility for yourself, or that the state has absolute responsibility for all of your problems, or society has an absolute responsibility to tend every wound and every emotional disturbance that you have, that everybody has to rearrange themselves to make you feel better. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing there I disagree with. He did the WPATH thing. Now, obviously, and he's at this point, he's got heterodox views. I keep meaning to dig into what he's talking about with climate change, because while I don't think it's that he's become a climate change skeptic, he's become a skeptic of the rhetoric around it and the solutions proposed. But again, I have to dig into that more. I know with San Francisco, he got really into how well-meaning liberals make the problems of drug addicts worse. And that was part of his lecture as well. And again, that's something I would agree with. I think a lot of ideas that are just broadly termed left are very naive. Now, that's a very broad use of the term left, because as we know from our Marxist friends and from Tusker, Marxists aren't down with that shit either. They're very nose in material reality, practical, and people who call that neo-Marxism are really besmirching Marxists who do not tend to be on board with a lot of those cultural ideas. But yeah, I mean, going back to Bree, I think this is something that I think this is what the Taibbi thing goes back to. I think because Shellenberger expresses views like that, he codes to a lot of people as right wing, like you must be right wing if you believe that. But most people don't believe 5 things that put them in one place on a imaginary line, right?
Yeah, no, of course.
Shellenberger has been relentlessly anti-censorship, and very much like Taibbi, it's been something he's really been focusing on. So yeah, I mean, he didn't miss a beat on that answer. And like yourself, I was relieved, because when you have somebody in the space whose work you like, whether you always agree with it or not, you don't want to see them just completely lose your respect, which if he had ducked that question or been uncomfortable with it or felt like he has to please his patrons at the festival. Are you recording? I don't do interviews.
I don't do recordings.
It wasn't my understanding when you put a phone in my face that I was being interviewed on camera. No, I mean, he was cool, and he answered honestly, and that's a viewpoint that I wish at that festival, because hey, look, you did have somebody there who's very articulate, who could have made the case. You're blowing it with this. Why didn't they put together a panel about that? That was another question I asked the founders. I said, hey, there's a civil war between, you got Matt Walsh attacking Greg Abbott, you got Candace Owens fighting with Ben Shapiro. So where do you come down on this? And that they would not answer.
Please clap.